Hello everyone, we will look at the protection from sexual exploitation and abuse and child safeguarding today. For this we will look at two aspects. One is the risks that children could face when they access or use the child protection or other services. And second, our obligations are to protect the children. So let's reflect the risks of children. What are the risks that children could face when they come to your services or other services that are provided by, for example, NGOs? You might have heard something, you might have seen it, or you might have read articles about it. Okay. Some of, unfortunately, very typical example is the sexual exploitation. For example, an aid worker ask a child to have sex in exchange of money, in exchange of the aid, or in exchange of different, like a packet of a cookie. Unfortunately, this happens everywhere, almost in every context. And it's a huge issue. Even though there is no sex, for example, it's also possible that our aid worker ask a child to see the pornography. This also happened. This is also a risk, and then the incident that we have seen, unfortunately, in many countries. But besides our sexual exploitations and sexual abuse, there are other risks that children can face. For example, especially in the countries where violent disciplines are accepted, it's very possible. I mean, I have seen as well the children who comes to the child-friendly space or spaces where children can enjoy are beaten by our animators or the child protection workers who are supposed to protect the children as a discipline. That's also that's a very common ones, and also the children could miss their schools because. We organize events, we organize the consultations at school time. That's also a problem for children because they have a right for education and we are serving for their right. We are serving for them, but we are kind of depriving their opportunity for education. And also a very common ones are photos. We take a lot of photos, don't we? But in principle, we really need to get the approval from the children and their caregivers when we take photos or when we use photos for something else. But again, we will look at later power, but there's a power imbalance. So children and adults might just say yes, not knowing that they could actually say no. And then we have seen also a lot of now the studies available of actually how photos in the internet can put children at risks. So we need to be even more careful about how we use the photos. And this is really our kind of typical risks that we cause. And also information, especially you receive a lot of our confidential information from children and they trust you. And even if it was not intention, sometimes information can be disclosed by mistake. And that's really damage our trust between our children and ourselves. But more importantly, that could cause really a huge harm to children. Imagine that children, for example, said to you that let's say that her father is abusing a daughter, and then it was first time for her to tell you. And if the information goes to the fathers or anyone to the father, that the child could really face more risks, more dangers. So the confidentiality of information is extremely important, but it can be easily broken if we are not careful. So these are some of the very typical examples that we face. And but there are a lot more risks, unfortunately, if we are not careful. And protection from sexual exploitation and abuse are focusing on sexual exploitation and sexual abuse against children and against adults. And child safeguarding is much more bigger issue. So the photos, the informations, the violent, which are not sexual nature, we just talk about risks. The child safeguarding covers all the other issues, including sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. So, I mean, it's not important for you to remember the two differences, but it's just we need to remember that there are risks that children could face when we are not careful. Even when we are careful, we could cause harm. So we need to always be careful and be aware that risk that children could face because of us. So now I want you to watch video which explains mainly for protection from sexual exploitation and abuse. It explains what is sexual exploitation, what is sexual abuse, and also your obligations as aid workers. So it takes 7 minutes. While you watch a video, please reflect to have you seen something like that in your place, and what you could do as individual, and what you could do or what your organization could do to protect children from sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. I hope you enjoyed the video. So I just wanted to ask you again our questions that what did you think about video? And have you seen or have you heard anything like that? And what you could do as individuals, and what your organization could do as organization to protect the children from sexual exploitations, sexual abuse, and other harms, the risks that we just talked at the beginning. So as individual, you're already starting in the right things. So it's very important for you to understand the risks and be aware of the risks that children face. And also to understand your obligations, what you are supposed to do and not supposed to do to protect the children from unintentional harms. And also, now what we are talking about here is general risks and general obligations. But it's also important for you to understand your organization's policy on protection from sexual exploitation and abuse and child safeguarding. And if you haven't signed the code of conduct, or if you have signed if you haven't signed it, ask your organizations to give one. And if you already signed it, also it's important for you to check the content, if you understand the content of the code of conduct. And as organizations, the organization has obligation to make a policy, first of all, on the protection from sexual exploitation and abuse and child safeguarding, and make sure that all staff members and all of you understand what are the acceptable or unacceptable behavior, and what are the consequences when you breach the obligations. And also it's important that organization have a reporting mechanism where the staff or the beneficiary can report when they have problems. And then finally, it's important the organization have a system to provide support to the victims of the sexual exploitations or other violation against children. The code of conduct I just mentioned is just a document that's really stipulates the behavior that are acceptable and unacceptable behavior as a staff members or as a person who work with these organizations. And it normally also includes what happens if you breach the code of conduct. So this is a very important document that everyone should have and everyone should sign. And not only just signing, it's really important that everyone understand what the contents of code of conduct. Now I want to ask you a question about why sexual exploitation and sexual abuse happens. There are lots of different reasons, but some of the big reasons that actually root cause is the power imbalance between the beneficiaries and us, aid workers. And also they're not only having the imbalance that there is abuse of power, that we use this power to abuse our beneficiaries, abuse the children. And it happens also because our aid workers, when the aid workers are not respecting the rights of children, rights of beneficiaries. So let's think about power, because power is a very, very important concept to understand why sexual exploitation and abuse happens, and also the other risks happens to children. And also power is important concept to change, to reduce the risks. So let's just think, what makes us powerful? What makes us more powerful than children or than beneficiaries in general? Again, there are lots of different reasons. So whatever you think, I think is very right. But the big reason is that we make decisions related to aid, like who receives services, what they receive services, where they receive services, and so on. So even though I don't make or you don't make the decisions from beneficiaries' eyes, you are part of the decision making. That's very important to them. So that's really gives us really huge powers over the beneficiaries. And then let's think now, what makes beneficiaries powerless? Again, there are lots of different aspects to make them powerless. So some of the example is that they do not know their rights to actually participate in decision making, or actually they are the ones who make decisions, and they don't receive information. Their services, their lives are really depending on aid workers. It makes them really powerless. And then children especially become even more powerless, because among beneficiaries, there's again big power differences among them, and children are even more vulnerable than adults, because children has even less ability to understand and participate in decision making. They are depending on not only us, but depending on adults within the affected communities. And that makes them even more vulnerable to the abuse than adults. But is power always bad? Can power be good? Can you think of some good examples of power, the positive side of power? One example is what we do. We don't work to abuse children. We work to protect the children. We want to use our power to protect the children, right? So power can be very positive. So make sure we can empower children by, for example, giving them information in a way that they understand, and making sure they are participating in decision making, and they know they are the ones who actually make decisions. We are serving for children, not them serving us. So this kind of change can help children to be empowered, but also for us to understand that this power that given to us is really to serve for children, not to abuse. So it's very important that we use our power in the right way and put children at the center of everything we do, and think for children, if this is convenient or if this is what they want, and then making sure that throughout the process we receive feedback and keep improving the thing that we do for children based on their opinions. So really, again, I just can't emphasize enough that children are center of the services, and we serve for children. And this will really are kind of very important things to remember when we work in aid. So now we have looked at the video, we looked at power, also we talked about risks. I want to also now I want to do a bit of quiz to you to check that if you understand what we have gone through, And also look at the maybe our self bias of your bias toward the children or PSEA child safeguarding. So let's do the quiz now. I will read the statements, a few statements, and then I'll give you 5 seconds to answers. And later I will explain why it's true or false. So first statement is aid workers are prohibited to have sex with children under the age of 18, even if national law allows it. Is that true or is that false? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So the answer is it's true. So even if, for example, your country is allowed to have sex with children under the age of 18, you are not allowed to have sex with children under age of 18. We are bound by our higher ethics. So it's really important to remember. Second, now our second statement. You took photos of children who comes to seek support from you. So who receive counseling or who receive support from you for your memories, and you uploaded photos to your Instagram, Facebook, or something else. And this is completely normal. This is not a problem. It doesn't cause a problem with the children. Do you think it's true or false? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So the answer is false. It could cause problem with children. Again, we talked at the beginning there are potential dangers of photos especially on the web at the internet. So we are not really supposed to take photos of children, especially the work that we do. We cannot take photos of children, and they are just for our personal memories or fun, and then upload it to the internet. We need to really consider how to use the photos, and we really think that their best interest at the beginning, their safety first before we do any activities. The third statement. So if an adult woman offers sexual favor to a humanitarian workers in exchange of money, this is her own decision, and this is not an issue. This is not a sexual exploitation. Is that true or false? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is false. It is a sexual exploitation. We are not any sexual activities with beneficiary in exchange of money, aid, or any other favors are prohibited. In fact, it's not only beneficiaries. Any sexual activities with anyone in exchange of money, in exchange of aid, are prohibited, even if it is legal in some of the country. So it's very, again, important. Like the case of children, even if, for example, our buying sex is legal in the countries, it's not acceptable behavior for us. Next statement. Also, your donor asked you to give real stories of children who are sexually abused. So you gave because the donor is very passionate about issue, and then the donor wants to raise awareness about issues and bring more support to your project. So you gave donors photos of the children that you're working with, and also are names, and not names or information, their testimony, and then you didn't give names or address or any information that can tell who these children are, except for the photos. So because you didn't use names and the other identifiable information, it won't cause any problem to children, and it is okay. Do you think it's true or false? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is false. Even though you didn't use the names, address, you gave photos. That's the biggest information to reveal who these children are. We really need to be careful that even though sometimes we make our best intention, the information could be revealed. And this kind of a situation, we really be careful to really look at any information you give could cause any harm to children. And if there is even the slightest possibility to cause harm to children, don't do that. Because there are a lot of different ways to raise awareness or bring issues to attention. Their safety, children's safety, are the most important. We are here to serve children. We are not here to exploit them. So it's really important that we put their safety at risk and then really think for every action that if it could cause harm or not. And if there's a potential risks, don't do it. So finally, the final statement. So I heard a rumor that one of my colleagues might engaging in sexual activity with a girl who come to seek support. Because it's rumor, you are not feel comfortable reporting it, and you started an investigation before you report. Do you think it's the right things to do so or not? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is actually false. It's not a good behavior. What you need to do is if you hear rumor, you just report and just tell this is rumor, and you are not sure if it's true or not, because we are not trained to investigate the cases like that. So we could really put yourself and the children, the girl, and your colleague at danger by investigating it. And then it could also, if it's true, maybe it could really cause more harm to children, and the case all the evidence can be disappeared and it cannot be investigated anymore. Or if it's not true, that you could maybe create rumors even though you didn't say anything. So it really, just principle is if you hear any rumor, you just report and tell that is rumor, and let the people who are trained to do investigation to investigate. And if it's just a rumor, it will be turned out to be rumor. So just report, don't investigate. So that's the end. So I just wanted to give the final messages before we close. So first, as a frontline worker, you can protect children, and that's our intentions. But we could cause harm to children when we are not careful. So just we need to be aware there are always potential risks. Even though with our best intention, we could cause harm. So for this, really, please just remember, please read your organization's policies on protection from sexual exploitation and abuse and child safeguarding, including a code of conduct, and make sure that what are the behavior that's acceptable and not acceptable. And also be aware how you can report in case there's problems or in case you hear about sexual exploitation and abuse cases. Finally, even if your organization do not have the policies on protection from sexual exploitation and abuse and child safeguarding, it doesn't mean that you are you're free to do whatever you want. You are still obliged to follow these general principles that you actually saw in the video, and then to protect the children. So hopefully it was helpful for you, and then there's a lot of resources, additional studies that you can do to really protect the children. So thank you very much. Bye.